Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm here today to talk to you guys about the value of music and what's happened to it in our society today. Music is still an incredibly powerful art form. It impacts everybody. It's used day in, day out in endless utilizations, whether it be utilitarian or something that's more psychographic. It's used in sports. It's used in advertisements. It's used in every cultural gathering. I would hazard to guess that most all of you at this point have some methodology whereby you keep some kind of playlist, some kind of soundtrack to your own life. And that's what provides all sorts of great emotional moments. You communicate your love, you communicate anger, you communicate all sorts of things with music. Yet for some reason, somewhere along the way, the value of music has been lost. The simple truth is you don't pay for music anymore for the most part. Most of you are either getting it stolen or you're streaming it, and it's that simple. And left in the wake is an entire generation of musicians and artists who are struggling, never mind to make an expensive record, just to exist. So how do we fix this? How do we repair the damage? Because clearly, there is damage. A big part of what I do and what I've always done in my career is I get a real thrill out of taking music that wouldn't otherwise be heard and getting it to a larger audience. Oftentimes, some of that music is actually the best music. It just doesn't cut through as easily, or perhaps it doesn't have the same kind of funding. And for artists that are younger that are trying to come up, it's more impossible than ever to reach an audience. If you're an older act and you're established, the frustrations are just as large. You built your ecosystem for decades around this concept of selling albums, and now that ecosystem is completely gone. So just imagine your own business and whatever it is that you do for a living, where suddenly, nope, that's free now. So I'm not suggesting that we're ever going to go back to the old way. It would be nice, I suppose, for some people, this attachment to physicality. You know, some of you remember these, and this was the beginning, if you think about it. The Walkman was very much the beginning of what? Portability. And once people got a taste of that, they wanted more, for good reason. You could take your music with you. You were in control. All sorts of items that we once fetishized and really held incredible attachment to are now relatively meaningless to people. Instead, people fetishize other things, especially devices, and not just the devices, but the data that comes on those devices. And oftentimes that data is transmitted in real time and sharing an experience, which is what people demand now. They want an experience. Just music, it's just simply not enough. And what we're left with, what we're left with really is a discussion here that we're talking about mediums, aren't we? We're talking about formats and mediums. But those don't really mean the same thing as the value of the music itself and the power that that music has to impact your life. And part of what I'm interested in is helping not only artists figure out a way to transmit that value, but to start putting a little bit of the responsibility back on the consumer again, as far as, you know, work was involved to create this wonderful thing that I have. What contribution am I as a consumer making? So today, like everything's in the cloud. And there's a good reason for that. It's about access. People want what they want, and they want it now. And as our friends at Prism have demonstrated, there's no limit to how much data and information that can be stored. You know, we've passed the terabyte threshold. There's so much information now that can be stored. And the motivation for someone wanting to own something seems unnecessary, doesn't it? So what comes from this is a new paradigm where creative people, not just artists, frankly, but creative people in general now have to face this reality where things are much more about consumption versus purchase. And what that means is you're consuming music more than ever. Statistically speaking, there's more music being consumed today than ever in the history of the planet. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because everything's out there. So why is it that you're consuming more than ever, but somehow the artists have slipped into this kind of second-class, not at best, second-class existence? Now that everything has gone to this place, the majority of the sales and physical probably aren't coming back. And the amount of money that comes in from these services at this time, you may or may not have read, are not anywhere close to adequate for artists to support themselves. The reality is, it does not supplant or replace in any way physical sales. Take a look at these numbers. Especially just in the first 6 months of this year, 50 billion audio and video streams. That's a lot of streams. And considering that people use YouTube as much as anything else to listen to music for free, that shows you exactly what we're dealing with. So how do we get here? Some of you might recognize that ship. For a long time, the music industry was described as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. And that's what we were doing. And in some ways, that was true. However, for artists and also for those in the industry, it's kind of difficult to comprehend how quickly we shifted from a paradigm where people understood the inherent value of music and suddenly went to, it's supposed to be free, and you should thank me for taking it. Again, imagine that in your job, whatever it is that you do. Starting today, whatever you do, it's free, and you should be grateful that they let you show how great you are at your job. So what came along next was Napster. And Napster really changed everything. What Napster provided was a legal methodology whereby people could get music in the evolving manner that they most wished to receive it, which was digitally. They wanted to get away from CDs, they wanted to get away. The younger generation was embracing all sorts of devices. And this represented a very exciting moment for us in the sense that the people embraced it. People were ready to use it and they were ready to pay. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Bear in mind, this is important. This is the moment where something that anyone that comes from any kind of indie background, you've all heard of indie, or any kind of independent-minded approach to things or something about democratization, there's always this idea of imagine if you could make your own music without needing tens of thousands of dollars. And you could make your own record without having thousands of dollars to press them. And then you could even get them out to people. And if it was good, people could hear it. That was a fantastic dream. And the thing is, we achieved it. Today, anyone can put music online, and anyone, theoretically at least, can get discovered. Unfortunately, the major labels didn't see it that way. They recognized this as a massively disruptive force that they could not yet get a handle on. So instead of allowing Napster, they said no to it. And there was a very, very heavy toll that was paid for that we're still paying for today. And what that is we broke our contract with the consumer. We'd already been doing it as an industry by selling them overpriced CDs filled with crap. It's partly your fault. You saw there was 70 minutes on it. You said, oh, it's got to be filled with 70 minutes, you know. So you're in the studio, oh, let's just put that on it. It's got to be 70 minutes, you know. So people were already fed up with paying, I don't know if you remember, $22.99 for a CD. Those were the days. But instead, what we did was we gave what you would call a red rag to a bull. We said to all of these people that were excited about this new paradigm and this new methodology, to hell with you. We don't like the way you do things. Even though we're digitizing things night and day and putting them on CDs and you can just rip them anyway, we insist that this process is not in line with what we want to do with the future. And in, like any business, the customer is supposed to be right. I guess the industry didn't quite see it that way. And so, what do people that steal music call themselves? Pirates, right? Pirate Bay was probably one of the most famous ones. That's no coincidence. That's nothing unusual about that. Because we empowered a sense of entitlement and almost hysteria with the consumer by saying no to them. And in that sense, we eventually lost an entire generation. What we allowed to develop was a moral consensus. And there's probably people in this room whose parents during that era looked the other way when they stole music. There's probably people in this room that bought entire massive hard drives and used to burn copies for people at school and make money. There's an entire industry that was built around stealing that the artists never ever saw. And again, finally, somebody entered the fray, and that person was Steve Jobs. And you're all familiar with what happened next. There was finally a legal way to get music. But by then, the damage had been done significantly, and it was impossible for a large number of those people to ever convince them that there'd ever be a reason to pay for music again. So what's left? You know, we did achieve democratization. We did achieve this amazing dream of distribution. But in the end, We didn't succeed in a parity that allowed people to compete on an equal field. Instead, we have this caste system where there are arguably a large number of haves and have-nots. The haves are bought into a major system whereby, frankly, they have to capitulate and play ball with whatever that system requires. And that's how it is that people talk more about Miley Cyrus than maybe they might talk about some really interesting folk artist that's out there. It becomes necessary, if you can't be famous in this climate, you have to settle for infamous. And also, despite the fact that we have offered these great methodologies for people to actually get things of great value at an affordable rate, society as a whole continues to really devalue music. If you think about it, people's attitudes towards musicians, people's attitudes towards music in general is incredibly dismissive. And there is an assumption, yet again, that it should be free. And it's probably time for people to start thinking a little differently, unless you want to see music dissolve into an incredibly boring thing. Also, you have to consider that for artists, the demands are incredible now. Just to be an artist, you can't just make music. You have to be a musician, you have to be a business person, you have to manage your social media, you have to manage your team if you're lucky enough to have one. You have to be creating content endlessly. And you also have to be in charge of your marketing and promotion. That sounds a lot like a job to me. It doesn't sound like trashing hotels and, groupies and drugs and drink. That's a lot of work. That's not nearly as much fun as it used to be. But my point is, it's time to change things up a little bit. And I've got a few suggestions here. For artists, they have to start talking about what is it that the consumer actually values as far as their music's concerned, and create experiences and new kinds of objects where the music, frankly, is kind of incidental. People are willing to buy a t-shirt or some other object, and it comes with a free download. But if you want to charge them for the download, they don't want to give you a penny. We have to embrace this and figure out new ways to enrich the experience. And also, people want access to a different kind of world that you're offering them and some kind of exclusivity. Artists have to get involved in new technologies now and really embrace them instead of running from them the way that we have in the past. Also, technology, research and development, these are things that the music industry has neglected always, in the sense that, as I said, we allowed Steve Jobs to come in and do our R&D for us. Our R&D we consider historically A&R, artist and repertoire. Artists also have to understand that there's all these amazing things coming like 3D printing, and also their own culpability in their situation, in the sense that many of these people have signed deals that are incredibly unfavorable. Most important thing, stop blaming the consumer. Even though I'm being critical of how the consumer is looking at things, the consumer was led to this position. It didn't just arrive there, and it's our job to win that back. And these are examples of what needs to be done. Lastly, let's talk for just a minute about the consumer. What can you do if the artists are holding up their end? First of all, there are endless new discovery tools out there that are actually really exciting and really fun to use and can turn you onto all sorts of different things. Avoid being old-fashioned. Embrace these and discover new things. The other things are fairly obvious. Live music. Many of you have gotten boring and you don't go out. It's time to stop being so boring. Go out, meet other people, experience music in a live environment, and don't wait until it's the gold circle ticket to go and see the Eagles or something. Instead, go and see something local, discover something, get turned on to something, because those people actually not only need your help, they deserve it. Spread the word, and also fundraising. There's a lot of negativity around that Kickstarter and things like that are played out. But if someone's a really great artist and they deserve your support, you should try to be there for them. Labels still matter. If there's one label that you notice puts out great stuff, be supportive of that label. Talk about it. Find out what their story is. It's kind of like food. Do you know where your music comes from? Lastly, stop making unreasonable demands all the time. If you think about it nowadays, people want everything from artists. They want everything. They want access. They want music constantly. They want photographs of them in their underwear. They want them to write about their personal life. And yet they still want them to deliver quality music on a regular basis. It's time for people to take a breath occasionally and consider that at its essence, art is something that can take time, and it takes attention, and it takes love. And only if all of us can join together in some way and have a more aware position as far as not just looking at music as something that is automatically free and devoid of any responsibility for any of us to think about. If we can stop thinking that way and start drawing even a small line of support between the consumer and these people, I can assure you the changes that you'll see in the music business and the changes that you'll see as far as realizing this dream of democratization could actually come true. I hope that you will all try it out. Thank you very much.